All right, today we're diving into some pretty fascinating new research. It uncovers a powerful and honestly really surprising link between one of the most common vitamin deficiencies out there and the risk of developing dementia.
So let's just get right to it. Here's the big question on the table. Could something as simple, as accessible as a vitamin D supplement actually cut your chances of developing dementia? And not just by a little bit? Well, the answer from this new research is pretty astounding.
And here is the number that really got everyone's attention, a whopping 40%. A major new study found that people taking vitamin D supplements had a 40% lower incidence of dementia. I mean, come on, that is a huge number. It absolutely demands that we take a closer look.
All right, so let's break down this groundbreaking study. We're going to figure out exactly where that incredible number comes from. First off, this wasn't some small-scale experiment. We're talking about researchers following over 12,000 people for a full decade, and what they found was pretty stark. After just 5 years, 84% of the folks taking vitamin D were still dementia-free. Compare that to only 68% of those who weren't. I mean, that is a really significant difference, especially over such a long time.
Okay, so what makes this finding so incredibly important for, well, almost all of us? It's because it turns out most people are walking around without nearly enough of this crucial vitamin. But first, we gotta clear something up. We call it vitamin D, but it's not really a vitamin at all. Nope. Once it gets into your body, it's converted into this incredibly powerful steroid hormone. It marches right into the nucleus of your cells and starts flipping genetic switches on and off. We're talking about its influence over nearly 5% of your entire genome. Its power is just massive.
And this really puts the scale of the problem into perspective.
A staggering 70% of the US population has vitamin D levels that are less than ideal. You've got 30% who are clinically deficient, and then another 40% on top of that who are insufficient. Just think about that. That means only 3 out of every 10 people are walking around with enough of this critical hormone.
So why is this so common? I mean, how do we get here?
Well, our bodies make vitamin D from the sun, right? But think about it. We use sunscreen, which is super important for preventing skin cancer, of course, but that blocks the process. If you have darker skin, your natural melanin acts like a sunscreen. As we get older, our production tanks. A 70-year-old makes 4 times less than a 20-year-old. And on top of all that, even things like living up north or your body fat percentage can seriously lower your levels.
Okay, I know what some of you might be thinking right now. A 40% reduction? That sounds a little too good to be true. Is this really cause and effect, or just a coincidence? And you know what? That's a totally fair question. So let's dig into the broader scientific case.
Look, that first big study shows a really strong link, a correlation. But as we all know, correlation doesn't prove causation. I mean, maybe people who take vitamins are just healthier in general, right? It's possible. But scientists have some pretty clever tools to dig deeper and really get closer to the truth.
And one of their most powerful tools is something called Mendelian randomization. The easiest way to think about it is like nature's own clinical trial. See, by studying the genes that make some people naturally worse at making and using vitamin D, scientists can totally isolate the effect of just the vitamin D and strip away all those other lifestyle factors like diet and exercise.
So, what happens when you use this clever genetic tool? Well, the results are even more dramatic. These studies show that having genetically low vitamin D levels can increase your dementia risk by up to 54%. Now that is much, much stronger evidence that this link is the real deal, that it's actually causal. And believe it or not, the evidence just keeps piling up. We have other studies showing that a deficiency literally accelerates brain aging. You can see the damage on MRI scans. We have clinical trials where supplements actually improved memory and attention for people with mild cognitive issues. And get this, supplementation has even been shown to reduce those key warning signs of Alzheimer's, like amyloid plaques, in patients who've already been diagnosed.
Okay, so the case for vitamin D is looking pretty solid, right? So now let's circle back to that first huge study, the one with 12,000 people, and check out some really fascinating details about who seemed to benefit the most. So this is where it gets really interesting. The benefits weren't the same for everybody. For women who took supplements, they saw an incredible 49% lower incidence of dementia. For men, it was still significant at 26%, but that's a pretty big difference.
Scientists are still trying to figure out the exact why, but one leading idea has to do with hormonal differences and the role that estrogen plays in how our bodies use vitamin D for brain protection.
And it turns out timing is a huge deal. For people who started out with totally normal cognitive function, taking supplements was linked to a massive 56% lower risk. Now, for those who already had some mild cognitive impairment, the benefit was still there, but it was smaller, at 33%. The takeaway here is crystal clear. Prevention is just so much more powerful than intervention.
So what about genetics? The APOE4 gene is the biggest known genetic risk factor for Alzheimer's. Well, the study showed that vitamin D still helped people who carry this gene, cutting their risk by 33%. Now, the benefit was even greater for people who don't carry the gene, a 47% reduction for them. But this is so important. It shows that even if you have a high genetic risk, you are not powerless. You can still take positive action.
All right. All of this data is incredibly powerful, but the most important question is, what does it actually mean for you? Let's turn all this research into a clear, simple, actionable plan.
So here it is, a simple 3-step blueprint you can talk about with your doctor. Step 1, get tested. You need to know your starting point. Just ask for a 25-hydroxy vitamin D test. Step 2, know your target. The sweet spot, the optimal range you're aiming for is between 30 and 60 nanograms per milliliter. And step 3, supplement smartly. For most people, taking somewhere between 2,000 to 4,000 IUs a day is what it takes to get into that target range.
So finally, how is it even doing all this? What's the magic? Well, you can think of it like your brain's personal cleanup crew. It helps clear out that toxic gunk, the amyloid plaques linked to Alzheimer's. It also calms down damaging inflammation. It boosts the brain's natural growth factors to keep your brain cells healthy. And it acts as an antioxidant, protecting you from daily damage. It's really like a Swiss Army knife for brain defense.
So as we wrap this up, all of this research really leaves us with one powerful question to think about. When you consider how incredibly common this deficiency is, and you weigh that against the profound potential benefits we've just talked about, it's really worth asking yourself, what is one simple step you can take, maybe even starting today, to invest in the future health of your brain?